Okay, so back to Grumbler. Okay, so this is Grumbler without any Bootstrap added into it. Oh man, did I close it? Robin, you genius. So Grumbler without any Bootstrap, and now Grumbler with Bootstrap. So this is me just having added in Bootstrap like right out of the box. Didn't do anything else to it. I just literally included Bootstrap in my application. And I used a CDN for this. I'll slack out the link to it, although it's very widely available. So all you need to do to start using Bootstrap is just copy and paste that into the head of whatever web page you're working on, and away you go. And you can see here that we get a couple of things right out of the box with Bootstrap. The font is different, the buttons have been styled differently, and that's pretty much it. There isn't anything else too crazy going on between this and the way it looked without Bootstrap. But Bootstrap does give you some things out of the box. So, for instance, it makes the styling on things like pieces of code, it makes that look a lot nicer. So if you weren't aware, there are a couple additional HTML elements we've never really gone over. I'll slack them out now. So there's, let's see, button, you know that one. I'm just writing out the ones that Bootstrap styles automatically for you. So that's button, mark for things that where you want to, like, usually it's used for things that you would want to put a line through. Code for pieces of code. Samp for sample computer output. I know it's really specific, but I mean it's just another semantic thing you have if you want it. KBD for keyboard input. Pre for pre-formatted text. Usually that's used for blocks of code when for some reason the code element doesn't work, and aber, which is for abbreviation. I'm not going to go into those too much, except just to show what they do. So here's some code. And if I refresh this, so this is how Bootstrap makes code look by default. Without Bootstrap, all it would do is just put this in a monospace font. So Bootstrap does a lot of little things like this, where it just does nice little updates for you. And I mean, there's actually a good amount going on in here. Like this has rounded edges and everything too. But what I'm getting at is that Bootstrap still sort of lets you just sort of pick and choose how you want to use it. Yeah, so it doesn't style most elements out of the box. I mean, looking at these buttons, they're not too different from how they were before. They're just square, and the font's different, and that's about it. Bootstrap does give you several different colors that you can use to apply to text. So if I look back over here, you see this color right here? So this sort of reddish color, this is Bootstrap's danger color. Yeah, Lisa? Yeah, so this is me just dropping Bootstrap into my app without doing anything else to it. This is me dropping Bootstrap in and doing some more stuff to make it Bootstrapier, which we'll get into in a bit. I'm just using this as an example of some of the colors that Bootstrap includes for you. So it has colors like this. This is danger. It also has important, success, which is green. A couple other things where you can just sort of apply wherever you want. So let's say I wanted to like style this new Grumble button a bit more. I could do something like button. So first I have to give it the button class. And that makes it look like a bootstrappier button. And then if I want to make it the danger color, I do button danger. Let me scoot this over. And there, now it's red. If I wanted it to be the success color, I would just do button success. And now it's green. And then I can also change the size too. Like I can do button LG for large, and that should blow it up a little bit. I can do button XS for extra small, and now it's tiny. so on and so forth. Can anyone tell me what I don't like about this line right here, the line that I've highlighted? Amari.
A lot of repetition.
Yeah, I say button 3 times. This isn't very dry, is it? So this is something where you see Bootstrap trying to sort of straddle the line between being a framework and a library. I mean, this, to my mind, this would look a lot nicer if I could just do something like that without having to repeat button a million times. Actually, this is a button itself, so like in a perfect world, I wouldn't even need to write button. But what's the problem with this? So let's say I just had my CSS looking like that, and that was how I used Bootstrap. What problems might I run into?
There might be other classes that aren't buttons that have new or success or XS.
Yeah, exactly. There might be other things where I want to use like the class name of success to do something completely different. I may have defined my own class called success, and so if I'm just doing this, then suddenly I have a CSS conflict right there. It's not too unlikely that I'm going to create something with a class called success at some point in my life. However, it's extremely unlikely that I will, of my own volition, create a class called button success. And so this is Bootstrap's way of trying to avoid conflicting with anything I do in my CSS, trying to make sure that it can just sort of be dropped in as convenient without destroying things. And when I say that this is Bootstrap trying to straddle the line between a library and a framework, if Bootstrap was more of a framework, it would probably just use this success class. And it would say, hey, I mean, you can make your own success class if you want to, but it's going to screw everything up. If you want to use me appropriately, then you will not define your own success class. It makes it more of a library by doing this whole button success thing. By saying, okay, I'm going to follow your rules, instead of it saying, okay, you have to follow my rules. And this is why Bootstrap has such repetitive names, is to just try to be convenient for you and not get in the way of whatever it is you're trying to do. Any questions about that? One.
In order to create a, let's say, a success button, do you have to apply the button class before the button success button?
Let's find out. Come on, thing. So we'll try getting rid of that button. I actually don't know what's going to happen. I'll make this larger so you can see it better. So this is interesting. It looks a lot like it did before, but now it has this border around it. And so I'm assuming that that's inherited from the browser's default styles. When you put in this button, it gets rid of the border around it. That's like a really small difference. It looks really small here, but if you have another browser that has like crazy default styles, then that might make a bigger difference. So yes, to all intents and purposes, you do have to do button, and then button success, and then button LG. As for this new thing, that's just something for Backbone. Backbone's JavaScript. So don't worry about this new thing. The important thing is right here. Other questions? No? Okay. And unfortunately, you're going to see this a lot in Bootstrap. But let's actually start playing around with Bootstrap. So let's see. What I would like you to do is go here. So I'm giving you your homework already. And basically, the homework is to take the HTML less grumble, the CSS less grumbler, and put Bootstrap and/or Foundation, which we'll be talking about later on today, into it to make it look nice. So I'm going to Slack out the link to this. You can go ahead and clone that down. So everyone take a minute or two to do that. Okay, and then when you're there, open up the index.html file. And then after that, the next thing you're going to do is just paste in this link, which pull in the Bootstrap style sheet, which I believe I slacked out before. Yep, there it is. So just copy and paste that in here. So you're just opening index.html, putting in the Bootstrap link, linking to Bootstrap. Again, I slacked that out before. It's right here. And just applying Bootstrap, plain old Bootstrap to your page. And then to actually view this, because this is an index.html, you can just drag it and drop it onto Chrome. I don't think dragging it and dropping it from, well, maybe it does work. Nope. Can't drag and drop it from Atom, so you'll actually need to drag and drop it from the Finder. Oh, real? Oh, like this thing?
No, the tab, sorry.
No way. Yeah, seriously. Wow, that is awesome. Nice. Yeah, one.
Does it matter where we put the Bootstrap CSS file, like if we wanted to override?
Well, we'll get to that, but for right, oh, like where in the head you put it?
Should it be above our style?
That's a good question. What do you think?
I think it should be above our style.
You think it should be above your style sheet? I'm inclined to agree. So if I have Bootstrap here, I mean, let's say I do like, I want my buttons to have a particular styling, and then Bootstrap has its own default styling. Remember in CSS, any CSS property is going to overrule a property that came before it. So if I say background color, like body should have background color red, and then I say body should have background color blue, body is going to have background color blue. It's going to take the second one, whichever one came after. So the way I have this right now, Bootstrap could very easily override any of my styles. So Lon, you're right. I should put it up here. So I should put it before the style CSS. Anyone having trouble bringing in Bootstrap? Yeah, Diana?
So if it's the first one, doesn't that one?
Well, yeah, so now my own styles, like presumably anything I put in style.css, that's something I'm like intentionally putting in there. That's something where I say like, hey, Bootstrap, no, I don't want buttons to be square. I want them to be triangles. I don't know. But I would want to put that after Bootstrap, because if I put it before Bootstrap, then Bootstrap is going to take precedence over my style sheet. The other way, my style sheet is going to take precedence over Bootstrap. It may not make any difference at all. I mean, if I name things so that they don't conflict with Bootstrap, it won't make any difference, but it might. Has anyone had any trouble like actually pulling in Bootstrap and opening it up in your browser and all that jazz?
I just wanted to ask, are we going to be, should we be forking it instead of just cloning it?
For now, you can just clone it. Doesn't matter. But yes, for homework, you will be forking it. Okay, so there are 3 ways to include Bootstrap in something. This is one way. So this is using a CDN, this bootstrapcdn.com to pull this in. And so I pulled in bootstrapmin.css, which is going to look terrible. Oh, access denied. What? It's probably because I need to be doing it not with just my browser or something. Well, at any rate, oh, wait, no. I left out a C at the end. That's it. Okay, so here is minified Bootstrap, which is impossible to read. Here is not minified Bootstrap, which is huge, but easier to read. Yeah, so I'm just pulling that in from the Max CDN place, so you can do that. You can also just download Bootstrap. I mean, you can literally just go back to this link and hit Command S to save it. I don't know what that thing is. Save, and then just save it on somewhere on your computer and just link to it that way. That's what I do when I want to develop offline. And you can also download the Bootstrap source. And so when I say the Bootstrap source, I'm talking about all the individual Bootstrap files. So Bootstrap is actually written in less. And you guys learned Sass yesterday, which is basically CSS redone in Ruby, so it's easier to write. Less is the exact same thing, except done in JavaScript instead of in Ruby. And that's how Bootstrap is put together. If I go to, well, actually, I've already downloaded it on here. If I look in here, and I'm on the wrong branch, git checkout, Bootstrap solution. If I look in here, I have downloaded all of the Bootstrap files. In here, there are, well, a couple CSS files, and in less, there are a lot of CSS files, or excuse me, less files. So what they did is they wrote all of this stuff in less, and then they compiled it into one big CSS file. But let's say you want to go into Bootstrap and you want to be really picky about what it is that you're using in Bootstrap. You can go in and you can like piecemeal compile all of these different less style sheets and like make your own Bootstrap. You can go in and change things. You can do whatever you want to those. And then you can compile your own Bootstrap. You can change it however you want. But that gives you a whole bunch of files you have to manage, so the easiest thing is just to link to that CDN the way we did before. Let's see. So here is my completed Grumbler, Bootstrap-y Grumbler. There we go. And I want to walk through a couple things in it. Also, incidentally, I mean, feel free to like add new posts and stuff, but the seeds for this are refreshed every 10 minutes, so you can like delete stuff and blow it up however you want. It's just the seeds are going to be refreshed every 10 minutes just to keep any permanent damage from happening. Or if someone goes rogue and puts something horribly inappropriate, then it'll be automatically taken care of pretty quick. Okay, so Bootstrap sections things with containers. So here I just made the entire body a container, but basically you need to have at least one container on a Bootstrap page. Containers, you're not supposed to put containers inside each other. So container indicates like the top level of sections of your page. And you do that just by doing class container. Inside a container, you can use Bootstrap's grid system. So let's see. Over here, you can see this call MD4 thing. This indicates that when I'm viewing this website on a medium-sized screen, this particular div right here should be 4 columns wide. That's 4 out of 12 columns. So Bootstrap uses a 12-column grid system. You guys remember grid systems from before. We had a class on it. So it uses a 12-column grid system. I can make this 1 and 11. That's fine. I can make it like 9 and 3. That's fine too. It can be whatever I want it to be, but it just has to add up to 12 between these two. So this right here, this is one row. You can see I put row right here, and the row has 2 columns that span this width of columns, if you will. So like here it is with the left one being 1 column wide and the right one being 11 columns wide. And this is like completely overflowing out of it, and yeah, it does not look too great. But the most interesting thing here is this thing in the middle, this MD. So again, this means when I'm viewing this on a medium-sized screen, that would be like an iPad or a tablet, then I want this particular div to be 4 columns wide. You can add in other things, which say call XS 12. So this would mean when I'm viewing this div on an extra small screen, which would be like a phone, then I want this particular div to be 12 columns wide. And so in this way, you can specify how big you want each div to be, each thing to be, on pretty much any mobile device. You can choose from, let's see, there is XS, SM, MD, and LG. So MD would be like an iPad, LG would be like a regular desktop computer. Any questions about that? And it's always going to follow the same syntax. And again, you can have as many of them as you want. So this will look really terrible. Let's see how it changes. Okay, so now I'm considered to have a large screen because this window is really wide. But as I start shrinking it, this will change. Oh, it's so slow. Come on, man, stop making me look bad. Okay, well, we seem to have given MD a miss. Or maybe I just need to, oof. Yeah, no, it's working. My computer's just being really slow. But if I go all the way to extra small, then you can see how it's going like 12 columns all the way across the page. But I'm just going to keep this on MD4. And if you just have one, then it sort of does its best to make this look good on any size of browser. And so I'm just worrying about medium-sized screens, and I think it looks pretty good. Questions? Walter, were you raising your hand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had a question about well, in the head tag.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that there's like there's an attribute of meta tag that's called like viewport or something.
Yeah.
Should we be using that, and how does that work?
I'm going to get back to you on that this afternoon when we get into Foundation, if that's okay. Okay, so this is all very nice, but I've actually done a lot of tidying up of this code. So this may not look tidy. You can see lots of Bootstrap classes in here, but I want you to see it before I did some tidying up. So I'm going to go back to my notes. All right, here we go. This is what I'm talking about. Look at how horribly undry this code is. I have control label column SM3 like a million times in here. That is really annoying, but it's something that Bootstrap sort of requires. This control label thing, you have to have that in there if you want this label to look like a bootstrappy label. I have to have this col SM3 thing in there for every single label if I want all of those labels to be exactly the same size. And so writing this is, well, really annoying, as you can imagine. So in order to save myself some grief, I went in here, and notice how up here I'm not actually just linking to bootstrap.css. I'm linking to my own Captain Von Bootstrap up here. Let's look at Captain Von Bootstrap real quick. Okay, so this is all of the CSS I wrote. This is actually Sass. So there's a Bootstrap port for Sass. I mentioned that Bootstrap's written in less, but you can download it for Sass and treat it that way. So here I did some Sass for Bootstrap. And what I'm doing here is I'm saying, okay, you know what? Instead of having to write .col sm3 for every single label, I'm just going to use Sass to say, okay, if I have a label, I want you to give it the same properties as col sm3. And so the result of this is my code looks significantly drier. It looks like this. And so there's no more col sm3 everywhere. So this is nice. What I did with this was, in here, I'm importing Bootstrap. So I'm importing the entirety of Bootstrap into this Sass file. Then I'm adding in a couple additional things at the end. I'm compiling this Sass, and the resulting thing is Bootstrap. So all of this Bootstrap, regular old Bootstrap, except with the other little changes I put in. So this is one way of customizing Bootstrap. There are other ways of customizing Bootstrap. I mean, I could just add in my own style sheet in classes, but I might run into a whole lot of problems with that, with conflicting classes and all that annoying stuff. I could go into Bootstrap itself, and I could edit the Bootstrap source files. So I could go in here and go into this bootstrap.css and manually go through here and try to change it to be the way I want. But that's going to be really annoying. And if Bootstrap comes out with a new version, then I can't just upgrade it. Yeah,
I
Erica.
was just gonna say, Bootstrap 4 is on its way.
Yeah, are you looking at the?
Looking at it now.
Yeah.
It's-
One of the big things is that it's the entire Sass.
Yeah. So Bootstrap's actually moving to Sass away from less. So yeah, I could like define my own styles, but that's not really going to work. I could go in here and like manually edit this bootstrap.css file, but that's going to be a huge pain in the butt. I could pick and choose the Bootstrap components I want, so I don't have to like bring in all of Bootstrap. I could just require, I could just use like, where are the different components? I mean, I could just use like the different little components out of here I want, but then suddenly I have like 3 million files to juggle. So it's much easier to just do this. I'm just importing Bootstrap, and then I'm adding in some additional logic to Bootstrap, compiling it, and I get exactly what I want. And now I only have one file to worry about. And again, this is just Sass, plain old Sass like you guys learned yesterday. Any questions about this? No? Cool. So let's see. You guys all installed Sass yesterday, right? You all did gem install Sass, I think? Okay, cool. So if I wanted to, so if I just require bootstrap.css, I'm not going to get the Sass. And I want to get the Sass. I want to be able to have access to this SCSS file. So in order to do that, we're going to use something called Bower. Have you guys talked about Bower before? Did you talk about it yesterday? So Bower is what's called a Dependency Manager, which is a fancy way of, it's basically a lot like Node modules. I mean, if you look at this Bower Components thing over here, it's exactly like NPM in Node, except it's for all my front-end stuff. So I've got Backbone in here, I've got Bootstrap, I've got this Bootstrap Sass thing, Foundation, which we'll get into. And so it's just sort of an easier way of hanging on to all of that. So we're going to use that. To get Bower, let's see. Hey, Jesse, is Bower NPM? Is it NPM? Okay, cool. So to download Bower, you're going to do npm install g Bower. So go ahead and run that now. Do you have a question?
Yeah, isn't it funny that you have to use a package manager to download a package manager?
Yeah, I know. Well, we're doing like gem install Sass and then npm install Bower, and we're not using Rails or Node in this particular application.
Does this need to be run in the directory that we're using? Or simpler?
Any directory you want.
Dash G takes care of that.
Yep. The -G, that stands for global, and it says like install this for anyone who happens to be using this computer, regardless of where they are. Lee, did you have a question? That was it. Cool. John?
You ever have to be like, these are small enough, don't you can just install as much stuff globally as you're ever going to use and not really worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure after a while, like maybe it can bog down your computer. But if you think about all of the gems we installed in Rails, and like, I didn't notice a difference. So I would say just go ahead and keep on doing it. And they're all in like a hidden location that you're never going to look at anyway. So once you've done that, anyone need more time to install Bower? We all good? Cool. Then go back here. Where I'm going to switch back to the master branch where all you guys should be, I think. Oh, shit. Okay, check out master. Okay, what you're going to do is after npm install g Bower is you're going to do Bower install. So now I'm inside this CSS redesign folder. Bower install bootstrap Sass. And you should get something like this. You might get a lot more because I already had this installed, but anyone having any trouble with Bower? Did it not work? Yes, awesome. And now that you've done that, you can, so I just installed this Bootstrap Sass folder. And now if you want to do what I did with like making your own Sass for Bootstrap, you can just go in here and do, so I'm going into, sorry, when I say here, I mean the CSS folder. So this is where I'm going to keep all the CSS that I wrote in the CSS folder. I'm going to go in there and do, I don't know, my awesome styles.css. So first I'm going to make my awesome styles.css. And I'll just leave that blank. Then I'll also make my awesome styles.scss. So .scss, that's for Sass. So I'm making two blank files, my awesome styles CSS and my awesome styles SCSS. And I'm just leaving them blank. Then, still leaving the regular old CSS one blank, inside myawesomestyles.scss, sorry, I know that gets confusing, but inside the SCSS one, I'm going to do @import Bower components bootstrap Sass asset style sheets bootstrap .scss. So I'm importing the bootstrap Sass file. So all of bootstrap Sass. And that's really all you have to do if you want. But just to show what this does, I'm also going to add in like body background color red or something. And I'll make that important so that you totally don't have to do this. I'm just doing this as an example. And then once you've done that, so just to recap, we have myawesomestyles.css, which has nothing in it. Then there's myawesomestyles.scss, which has this import Bower components, blah, 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 and then just some other random line of CSS in it. We have those two files. And now I'm going to compile my Sass. And so the way I'm going to do that is by going into that CSS folder. So there I am inside the CSS folder, and I'm going to do Sass myawesomestyles.scss to myawesomestyles.css. So that's what I'm typing in, and then I'll let her rip. We'll see what happens. So what it's doing right now is it's reading through that entire bootstrap.scss file, and it's reading all that Sass, and it's compiling it to CSS. And then it's adding in any additional changes I made, and it's putting all that into the CSS, this myawesomestyles.css file. There's a lot going on here, so this is going to take a little while. Lisa, you had a question? I didn't do anything. I just made those two files, and then in one I did that @import thing. Did you do the @import? So that's it. And then I just CD'd into the CSS folder, and so wherever those style sheets you just made were, and then type Sass, what you see on the screen. So all that done, if I go back into the code here, and go back to my index.html, I'm going to link to my awesome styles.css, and we'll see what this looks like. Hopefully we get something bootstrappy with a red background. And there it is. Isn't that neat? Sorry, that's in Firefox. I'm not going to do it in Firefox. All right, cool. So now we can see that this worked. So again, I imported all of that bootstrap Sass. I made a couple little changes to it, and then I compiled the Sass to CSS, and now I'm using it. Not very well, but I'm using it. Questions about that process? I know that there are a lot of steps there. It's all written down in the lesson plan, however. Wait. The CSS file. So a browser can't read SCSS. A browser can only read CSS. So again, what we just did was we turned the SCSS into a different CSS file that the browser can actually chew. So again, the purpose of Sass is to be able to write CSS without having to actually write CSS. And doing that Sass, SCSS, CSS, that turned all the Sass into CSS. I'm saying so many S's right now. Okay. So there's all that done.
Important. Is that just a note?
Oh, that was, so important. If you don't know what it does, I'm not going to tell you because it's something that you probably should never use. Well, fine. Basically, it says, like, if there's a conflicting background, like if I have body, background, color, blue down here, it's a way of upsetting that order of precedence and saying, like, you know what, even if another body with a background color of blue comes along later in the CSS, use this one. This is the most important one. This is the one I should use. And using important is strongly discouraged because it makes your code really hard to work with. So only use it if you absolutely have to. It's one of those things like the BR tag where I really don't want you guys even to know they exist. Okay, so with that done, like really everything else about Bootstrap is just picking and choosing the classes you want and just putting them into your page. So I'd like you to go ahead and start on the homework, which is redesigning Grumbler to make it look nicer. So now that you've cloned it down and done all sorts of things to that clone, please now lose everything you just did and fork it and clone down your fork and then do the same thing to the fork. So the submission process for this homework is, let's see, right here. You're going to be submitting this the exact same way, which is to do your usual forking, clone it down, make changes, push back up, and then make a pull request to this Grumbler CSS redesign thing. And so the challenge is to make the site look nice and look, well, it's to make the site look nice, A, using Bootstrap, and B, using only Bootstrap. So when I say that, not adding in any of your own CSS, not writing background color or text decoration, not writing any of your own CSS, just using Bootstrap's built-in classes to make the site look nice. So this one, I didn't do any of my own writing. I didn't write any CSS on my own, remember. I just used Bootstrap's built-in stuff, and I feel like it looks pretty okay. So your goal is to do the same thing, not writing any of your own CSS, just using what Bootstrap has built in to make the site look nice. Of course, there is solution code in here. There's this Bootstrap solution branch, but please do not just like copy that over. Please like actually take a stab at this. I mean, actually see what you can do with Bootstrap. Yeah, questions about that? Laura?
So you're saying don't even write like stuff to make it dry and all the...
That's okay. So, sorry, just to be more specific, don't write any CSS properties, but writing Sass is okay. So no writing like background, color, red. You can't do that, but you can do the @extend, like call SM3. That is fine.
Explain the extend. Could you explain extend again?
Sure. So what extend does is, oh, now I don't have it. Well, if I were to write this, extend call SM4, this would say, look for the rule that talks about this selector. So look for any rules that apply to something with a class of call SM4, and also apply them to label. So it's a way of sharing properties between different things. Does that make sense?
So that's
Sorry, Jeremy moves next.
So I'm looking, I just, we did everything.
at the CSS file.
You're looking at what?
The style.css file.
Uh-huh.
A lot going on.
In style.css, there shouldn't be.
Well, after connecting,
There still shouldn't be anything going on in
I'm seeing about 6,000 lines of code.
this thing. I'm looking at style.css right now, and I don't see anything. I think you're probably looking at this myawesomestyles.css, this one.
Right.
So this, remember, this is what I use Sass to compile this file into that file, the one you're talking about.
Okay.
So that took everything in the bootstrap.scss file, took all of Bootstrap, and it compiled it into CSS.
Right.
So this is all of Bootstrap, and then any additional changes I made. So like this little change I made, like before I had body background color red. If I were to compile this again, I would get all of this stuff, and then down somewhere at the bottom, oh, well, there it is, body background color red. So that's what it did. It took all of Bootstrap, and then it added that one thing onto the end.
And then, so what is the role of the style.css?
So this is my way of not having to link to multiple files, basically. Yeah, that's a good question. So this has all of Bootstrap in it, and it also has the changes I made. So if I didn't do it this way, I would have to link to the Bootstrap CSS and to like my own CSS file where I wrote all the things I wanted to change. And that would just be one more file than I really want to deal with. So this way I get Bootstrap and all the changes I made into one file. So all I have to do is just include that one file. I don't need to include bootstrap.css or anything else, just this one file.
There's nothing in that folder now? Style.css.
Yeah, no, this is completely blank. That's just hanging out. It has no purpose.
So in that case, can we just link to that one?
I mean, you can link to, yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, you can like have another style sheet down here at the end if you want it. But if you can just put everything in one file, then you may as well just put everything in one file. John?
Are we trying to avoid changing HTML?
No, sorry, you can absolutely change the HTML. So we're complete opposite of everything you've done before. Now you are absolutely encouraged to change the HTML. So this is one downside of using Bootstrap is your HTML is rapidly going to become less semantic than it was before because you're going to add in stuff like, well, like call SM3, which has no semantic meaning whatsoever. So this is one of the downsides of Bootstrap is you're sacrificing semantics for the sake of convenience. You can make a really nice looking website without having to touch a line of CSS at all. Walter?
My question was about the add extend property. So, so you have the label, and then brackets, then you had the call SM3. So job call SM3 is the parent class in this case.
Yes.
It's passing its properties to label.
Exactly. So this is passing its properties onto that. And you can have multiple in here too. I mean, I could do call SM4 if I wanted. That would make things look really weird on my screen, but I could do that. Ed?
If you were defining frameworks that start mixing in the JavaScript and HTML, does this just kind of get really messy? Or is it like another piece of it sort of
Does what get messy?
just like always comparing HTML and
Yeah, and I mean, this is something that you're going to see. So yeah, Bootstrap definitely makes your HTML messier. It keeps your CSS neat and clean. I mean, presumably, I am never going to touch this CSS file that I made from Sass. Like, I actually shouldn't have called this My Awesome Styles. I should have called this Do Not Touch. This contains bootstrap.css or something. And so it keeps me from having to really touch anything except for HTML. And a lot of developers aren't really comfortable with CSS, so this lets them avoid CSS. So yes, it does make your code messier, but it's always a trade-off. I mean, it's sacrificing code cleanliness for convenience. Excuse me. Other questions? Tom?
Once we've done that, do we need the SCSS version of the import power components inputs and all that?
Oh,
Is
this
that
one?
still-
You could delete it if you wanted to, but I'm going to leave it in there just in case I want to recompile later on. If I'm like, oh crap, you know, I also wanted to add in this thing for inputs, blah blah blah, because otherwise I'll just have to create a new file all over again, and blah blah blah. So I just leave it there. It's not doing anything, but I leave it there. Questions? Everyone know what you're doing with respect to this Grumbler thing? I mean, it's really just taking this. I'm not sure why the image. Oh, the image is there. It's just a mostly white image. It's just taking this and making it look nice, trying to use Bootstrap, and that's pretty much it. But of course, I have to ask some review questions at the end. So, Taiwan, could you tell me what is the difference between a library and a framework?
Library is just kind of collection of
Mhm.
frameworks. Framework is like running tools.
Yeah, kind of. Anyone have another definition? Erica?
Basically, as you put it,
Must be the right definition.
I know. Library you put into your code, and you put a library into your code, and you put your code into a framework.
Yeah, you put a library into your code and you put your code into a framework. There's not really, there's like very much a gray line between those two things. I mean, Bootstrap, some people say it's a library, some people say it's a framework, some people say it's both. I mean, there's not like a clear definition there. You can sort of interpret it either way. But in general, that's sort of the philosophy towards which you go. Let's see. Rachel, what is the difference between a glyphicon and a jumbotron and a megatron?
Okay. The glyphicon are those icons
Mm-hmm.
that you need to link to.
Mm-hmm.
Jumbotron, I think it's a box that just indicates something's more important than something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure about the
Erica,
It's an Autobot.
it's an Autobot. Yeah. Thank you. This is very important to Bootstrap. Let's see. Sam, what's one situation in which you might want to use Bootstrap versus one in which you might not? No right answer to this, just like picking your brain.
I guess if you want to use Bootstrap, if for your portfolio, if you were doing more back-end oriented stuff and you weren't too concerned with showing off your front-end skills, or your like design skills.
Yep.
Just the reverse of that.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? It's a transformer from the TV show's Transformer. I was just putting it in there as a joke. Sorry, Lisa.
It's also white.
Didn't mean to throw you guys off there. Okay, cool. I'm gonna put the music back on and off you go, and I'll be floating around.